Welcome to Auburn Community Television in this episode of Meet the Artist. Meet the Artist is supported by the North Auburn Artist, introduce artists in our local community. Today we are filming on location at the Auburn Host Lions building at the Gold Country Fairgrounds, located in Auburn, California. Our guest today is Peter Fabian, and I was so excited about having him here because I have watched the construction of this renovation of this building for over a year. And he is the person who is behind this absolute beauty that is found in this building. Now, when I first asked Peter to join us, he told me he didn't think he was an artist. But I'm going to let you be the judge of that, because I think once you view this episode, you will find that Peter really is an artist, and his creations are a work of art. Peter, thank you so very much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about my passion and the work that I did here.
Well, your passion certainly is reflected in what you have done to this building. It is a pure joy to come in and see it.
It was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to get that done, yeah.
Well, let's start out with how this all began.
It began with a simple phone call. One of the members of the Auburn Host Lions Club gave me a call and said, there's these redwood logs that are laying on the fairground premises, and is there anything that we can do to put fresh life in them, repurpose them? And so I came, looked at them, measured them, joined the Lions at a meeting here, gave a little presentation about the capability of our company, and just, one thing led to the other, and, here we are. Yeah.
Now, these weren't any just ordinary logs that were hanging around the fairgrounds. They actually had special meaning to the Auburn Host Lions as well as to the community.
That's correct. Those are trees from the Luke Ferdinand Morgan's Memorial, which is when you come into the fairgrounds from the high street, there's a little lawn strip on the right. And so this is where those trees, they were for quite a while. And what happens with the drought that we had, there were water restrictions, those trees, they didn't make it. They got diseased and branches started falling down. In short, they became a liability for the fairgrounds. So they had to be taken out, and that was done, and then the logs were laying around, and I got the phone call, and so what we did is we decided that basically we're moving the memorial from the lawn into this building, and that's what happened then with the help of the Auburn Host Lions and the Heritage Foundation and the folks from the fairground. Real collaborative effort. A lot of people got involved, and I can't even stress enough how much I appreciate all the help that I got from the folks around to make this happen.
And it's something that is going to be appreciated for not only the people that are here at this time, but for future generations.
Oh yeah, I hope so. That it's going to be around. Yeah.
Well, I hope you see this not only as a memorial to Mr. Morgan, but also to yourself. This is pretty fabulous.
Oh wow, that's it.
It's your legacy.
I didn't look at it like that. Yeah, I mean, the way I looked at it is that I'm a blessed man. I'm a blessed man with my family supporting what I'm doing. I'm a blessed man that I have the skills and ability to do something like that, and that my Lord and Savior put me at the right time into the right place, and so here I am. Yeah.
And we have this.
And we have this. Yeah.
So let's start with how you got started. And I know we talked about a little bit that I know there's a lot of technical aspects to this, and I've just told you to tell it the story as you would tell it, and I think our audience can keep up with you.
Yeah. So I always liked woodworking, even as a child. I grew up in a family where a lot of things were just done without going out of the family. My grandparents lived through World War II. My dad is first generation, born 46, so he grew up under really difficult conditions. So did my mom. Yeah, and so that's how I was raised. Yeah, and you do as much as you can and just make. Put all the resources at it, and so that's the environment. I grew up in Germany, and I actually didn't go into the trades. I actually went to university, and my background is I have a bachelor's of optical engineering. So actually, it's a master's. I upgraded one more time. But anyhow, I was doing a lot of high-tech work in the corporate world. Worked for a laser company in Germany, who then brought me over here to Auburn. So that was in '99, and Was pretty successful, made it up to be the general manager here of the division in Auburn, and 2008 came and the economy tanked, and the company decided to close the facility. Stuff was outsourced, parts were sold, and I ended up with my family in Boulder, Colorado. 2008, real estate market crashed. We couldn't sell our home, family moved in. So anyhow, I was working for a company in Boulder, Colorado in 2012. I had a little health scare. That kind of really shook my wife and I, and we decided, all the money is really not worth it. I have 3 kids, and we decided a really conscious change in lifestyle. And we had family still here. My wife's from California, so we came back to California. And then the question was, what am I going to do? And I did my PowerPoints and Excel spreadsheets in corporate America. I wanted to do something where at the end of the day, I created something tangible. I can step back and I can see what I did. And
I can certainly understand that.
Having loved working with wood, that's how I got into woodworking. And the fact that I live in Forest Hill, I have 5.5 acres of forest. I wasn't going to buy my lumber at any of the big box stores. That's how I got into the milling of lumber. And once I was into that, I realized that, wow, I can actually do stuff that other people cannot do because I'm literally in control from the tree to the final product. Yeah, and that is a key thing for what was created here, because you would not be able to do such a thing going to any kind of distributor and buying off-the-shelf boards. That's just not possible. Yeah.
Now, when you first came on to the fairgrounds and looked at these pieces of lumber, not lumber, but this wood that is scattered about, did you bring your equipment right here and start milling here, or did that involve?
Well, first and foremost, I had to give a sales pitch, and somebody had to come up with the money.
Yes.
Yeah, something like this doesn't get done for free. Yeah, and I'm a one-man show. So the way it works is when I run the mill, and usually my customers are present and they help me. Yeah, and that's actually what we did. We and the folks here at the fairgrounds, they help to move the logs. They're being staged, and then you pull up with the mill in front of it. And we actually have a picture that we can maybe show where some of the folks were helping. You can see the mill, and one of the logs is laying in front of it. And
this is when you actually brought your equipment here on site to do the trees. That's correct.
I brought the equipment here, and we started milling, and at that point it was really more kind of a project along the lines of, let's mill some boards and put them on the wall. And it was basically kind of like, let's do fence boards and nail them against the wall type of thing. And that's how it started out. But then I did come across that one log in particular. And you kind of have to keep in mind that I got involved after the fact. The trees were dead, they were cut down in random pieces, some were broken, whatnot. And it was really a salvage operation at that point. And I came across that one log where I thought, oh wow, that one, that's a jewel. That one is, it was in real nice condition. It was a little bit further up the tree and not too many knots and whatnot. And that's when I saw, hey, I can do something very special here. Yeah.
And at that point, did you actually have that vision of what was going to be the final product here?
Yeah, because I worked many times with redwood, and there are certain proportions that I was looking for that I could see ideally in that log, and I realized, wow, I can do something very unique with that. With that said, that was in the middle of, I had some guys from the Lions Club helping me in milling and whatnot, and what I saw is you need to apply a different manufacturing technique than what I was doing at that day with those guys. So we put that log aside, and I asked the fairground staff, after having talked with the CEO, if I can take it home, and because I wanted to process it in a different manner, and that happened, and that really then kind of opened up the scope of just nail some boards on the wall to what we see and what we got right now here.
Oh, I think that when they envisioned it, that's exactly what they thought you were going to do. Just put some paneling, you're straight up.
That was the deal I had cut with them. Yeah.
Yes.
But once I came across that log, I thought, wow, let's do the vision that I had, and I didn't know how it's going to turn out, but the more I went through the necessary process steps to mill those boards in that particular manner, the more it was obvious that, oh wow, this is coming together nicely.
So let's talk a little bit about the milling process. So you have this large piece of equipment and you put this big log on there. Does it still have the outer bark onto the log at that point?
Yeah. You start out literally with a piece, a chunk of the tree. Usually you mill just the trunk. If you have big branches, you can mill those too. And you pull up with the mill next to that log, or if it's more than one, it's called a log deck. They're all kind of laying there. You lower the loading arms, you got hydraulic, you roll the log on there, and everything from there is done with the machine. You load it, and you have to do certain adjustments. And if you would mill a fence board, the way it basically works is you're hogging out a beam where the width or the thickness of the beam is equivalent to the width of the board, and then you just slice it off. And I think we have a picture there too. It's a little bit of close-up. You can see a beam laying on the mill, and then the mill just takes slices off, and that's how you get your typical fence board if you would do fence boards.
But you're using kind of the same process here in actually creating these pieces of lumber.
No, that was the initial when we said let's just throw some boards on the wall.
Gotcha.
Then I took that one log, took it home, and that is really a entirely, you use the same equipment, but it's an entirely different sequence of steps. And if you want, I can quickly kind of lead you through that.
Absolutely, let's go through these steps.
Okay. So, and again, there's some pictures that are going to be shown while I'll talk. The first one basically just shows how you would mill boards if you just mill fence boards. And you look at the log, and you take out these two slabs, and you slice off. You have some remnant pieces on the outside that you can salvage. That's how you get fence boards. Now, with that said, if you want to do what was done on the wall here, those boards, they have certain geometrical requirements, and we also have a picture where you see some of them laying there. That was during the construction. To highlight what the important thing on those boards is that the sapwood-hardwood transition, and the hardwood in redwood is the dark piece, and the sapwood is the light yellow or almost white. That transition, that line, is basically symmetrical in the board. That's a requirement. In best case, it's not just symmetrical, but it's really in the middle of the board. And so in order to achieve that, you do have to mill the log differently. And we have another picture that shows you basically take the log and you call it flat sawing. You just slice it all the way up. And you get boards they're varying in width. They still have the bark on it on the outside. But that's how you slice it up. And then after that, you dry them. And there's another little picture that we have, and you can see some redwood there in one big stack. You have to keep, you keep the book, which is the order, basically like the pages in a book. And because it's very important if you want to create what's called matched boards later on. And that's another thing. I brought a little sample here. So if you look, for example, at these two boards right now, you can see that the pattern on them is identical. That knot, you got the counterpart here, you got the two little knots on the bottom. You got the transition red to white that's symmetrically in the board. Those are the kind of boards that you need in order to create what's on the wall here.
Now, when you're cutting it, though, would this be one piece, and it would actually be like this? Is that what we'd be seeing when it's coming out?
When you cut them, they're basically laying on top of each other. So and they're sharing one cut.
Okay.
And that's how you get then the same pattern. And we have another picture then that's going to be shown here in just a second. It shows once you sliced it up. The key thing in terms of color and contrast that we're playing here with is, as I said, the hardwood sapwood transition. And in that picture that's being shown, you can see the log, the end of the log. You can see there's a concentric ring in the middle, and that illustrates the darker area versus the lighter area. And it shows all the cuts once it was sliced. And so what you do is you take two of those adjacent boards that still have the bark on the outside. Yeah, and those are shown as gray boards in that picture that's being seen. And out of those two, you are going to work out what you actually see here, which is the 6-inch wide board. Yeah. And in that graphic, you can also see that there's 3 pairs of 6-inch wide boards shown, that if you look at the interface between these 2 boards, yeah, you're putting that red to white transition, if possible, in the middle. Yeah. And so now you have the 2 boards with the bark on it that are matched, and you have to work out those pairs. Mm-hmm. Yeah. The way this is done is you take those pairs with the bark on it, and you put them on the mill. Now, when you do that, you're actually gonna end up with a little challenge that Mother Nature is doing what it likes to do, and trees don't just grow straight. And sequoias or redwood in particular, they have quite a pronounced taper. So if you would do the milling approach like fence boards, what I talked about earlier, you would get boards that have that transition randomly somehow in there, just diagonal or whatnot. So the issue is that because of the taper, you have to kind of compensate and account for that. And you got your match pair, you clamp it together, and then there's a lot of alignment on the mill, to get the end spot on each side of that matched pair to the same height in order to go 3 inches above and 3 inches below to get a matched pair where the transition is symmetrically in the middle. Yeah. So there's a lot of alignment. To make matters worse, that whole hardwood sapwood transition thing is, as you go up the tree and the tree gets smaller, unfortunately, the hardwood versus sapwood on the inside of the tree doesn't just follow the outer cone. It's doing something different.
I was going to ask that. It's obviously, as you say, nature is not constrained, and you can see that in some of the boards. And those patterns actually showed up in the tree itself.
Yeah. So it basically it takes a lot of additional milling steps. It takes a lot of alignment. It takes really being organized, because now you end up, because you're talking a tree, you're talking about hundreds and hundreds of matched boards, and now they just came off the mill, so they're not even planed. They're still rough sawn, and you still have to run them through the planer. And while you do that, you got to make sure you keep them together, that they don't get mixed up. But what one could say, what's the big deal? They both look the same. Well, you know what? Wait a minute. You got so many options to screw something up, and you got hundreds and hundreds of boards laying there in front of you. At times it was a challenge.
I can imagine so. I would have put sticky notes on everything.
When you start getting tired, and the first time you realize towards the end of a workday that, wait a minute, did I get that wrong? That's the time where you gotta call it quits. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, I think you would have to keep your wits about you in all aspects of this.
Yeah.
So what do we do next then?
What do we do next? In the building here?
In terms of this process.
Okay, so then you basically end up then with the processed boards, matched pairs on a pallet that you bring into the building, and here's the key thing, that what you see on the walls here, all of that would not be possible if you don't process the boards as I just described it. If you would take some boards and you paint them red and white in a real nice manner, and you have matched pairs, putting that up on the wall is really not a big deal. Once the boards were in here, then you start putting them up, and so going back to that one initial log. So I started work in terms of putting things on the wall here 2 weeks before fair in 2017.
Yes.
And that was all what I had left, and the request was, can you get at least one wall finished so that come fair time, we can show some progress in that building. And because of the geometrical requirements of that pattern, you basically have to start out in the middle of one of those diamonds. And so what I did is, and keep in mind that building was from the Auburn Host Lions Club. It was still used during that time, so they came and had their meetings. So I started out with the diamond that's behind us in the middle, and I used that one particular log that I milled as I just described it. And so as the diamond was growing and people were coming in, the ohs and ahs and look at that, and it was very gratifying, but at the same time I was really racing the clock, because I only had 2 weeks and my request was 4 weeks, and what was done here wasn't all. I mean, there was the insulation put up, vapor barriers, the electrician was in here, and a lot of other people that I was alluding to that earlier that make that possible and for me to do my part. Yeah. And so I was really racing, I had a scaffolding in here, and actually at times my wife was here and helping me. She was running the planer, and it was quite intense, equipment everywhere. And so, and as that diamond came together, it was obvious that, those are not just fence boards on the wall. And after that, the scope was really expanded of this project. Yeah.
Now, also in this process, isn't there some drying time that has to be incorporated in once you've cut the board, and that has to be at various stages? So when did that get introduced into this?
There's several steps, and some can only happen if the material is in the right condition. And you got to mill it green if at all possible. You got to let it dry, and after that you can run it through the planer. And you might have to do some corrections in terms of straightness, and then you can put it up. And once it's up on that particular wall, then we were putting the finish on it. There's a coat of polyurethane on it to protect it from any smudges or whatnot. Yeah. So drying of a 3/4 inch board, depending on the time of the year and literally depending on the weather, can take up to 4 to 6 weeks. Yeah. So this wasn't just something that was done, subsequently in one piece. It really started with the phone call probably around February 2017, and it finished when its current state finished about in March of 2019.
And that's with all of the walls that we see?
That's with all of the walls. The paneling was done before Fair 2018, but at that point I did not get to put all the trim up. And then, you have events, you have home show in here, and, all kinds of other stuff, and you kind of have to work around that, And so I finished the trim in March of this year, and the building is right now in a state where most of the project that I said that I committed to is done. But because it turned out so nicely, so now, there's bigger plans, what we're going to do with the ceiling, how we're going to add a bathroom, and all of that, So there's hopefully more to come. Yeah.
Now, when you first started out, and you said that you had that initial tree that had already basically had died and had been trimmed down or cut down, is that one tree? Did that make this entire backboard?
So that if you come in and if you look at Luke's former memorial, those were actually more than one tree. Yeah, there were at least 3, maybe even 4. Yeah, you can see the tree stumps are left over. Now, when I came into that project, some of those logs were already evaporated. They had disappeared, who knows where. I literally had to salvage what I could, and it was really only that one log out of all of those logs that were laying around that was contributing to the diamond in the middle of that wall. If you go a little bit further out to the sides of that wall, you're actually ending up out of your peripheral vision, and you're not going to notice that the boards there don't really have matches. But that kind of opened the eyes to everybody. Wow, we have a great opportunity here to create something just that's one of a kind in Placer County. And so when I asked parties involved, what do you want to do? You just want to, because what was left over was just fence boards, so to speak. Nothing that was matched, nothing with the symmetry that's required for those patterns. So I asked, do you guys want me to just put up the rest of the boards, which is kind of going to look rather boring? Or here's the opportunity, we can create something very unique, but we would have to process, another tree. And so there was one more tree that didn't have the issues, was leading to that liability. So it was actually a fairly healthy tree. With that said, it was so healthy that it was obvious that within another year or two, it's going to start cracking the foundation of one of the nearby buildings at the fairgrounds. So it was decided, that the fate that's going to come for the tree anyhow, we're going to accelerate it and going to, capture the wood and, preserve it in this building.
And that wood actually ends up being the final walls that we're seeing.
That one tree then, because I was involved from the beginning, which I really prefer to do in any project, when the tree's still standing, that tree, because of the way it got processed, I got what I wanted. Basically, that's what it came down to. It was cut to the right lengths and all of that. It yielded enough material to do the 3 other walls that we see here, and it really just yielded just barely enough. I mean, the last few square feet that I had to put up, I was down to just a few boards, and I was really struggling with, but it worked out. Yeah.
I think that actually exemplifies one of the things that I wanted to stress through this program as well, is that a life of a tree doesn't necessarily end when that tree has fallen down or it has to be removed. And when I was here for the home show this last weekend, this building actually had a lot of woodworking and various projects that have been made from some of the glorious trees around us. And it did show that life cycle. And I think what I took away from that was, if you have a tree that has fallen down on your property, call someone like Peter, because he can come, he can look at that tree, he knows how it has to be cut, so it can be repurposed like something that happened in this building, which is absolutely fabulous.
Thank you.
Yeah. If you really want to see the building, you have to come here to the fairgrounds to see it. And if Peter happens to be here and to talk with you about it is even extra special. Now, if people do want to contact you again, is there a way that they can get a hold of you?
Yeah, they can get a hold of me, and I hope we can just, put my website and the phone number in there. One thing that I want to emphasize is that the work that we're doing is really 99.9% of what I'm doing is all custom. Yeah, there's a little bit of work where we're sometimes competing with the big box stores, just do framing lumber. But the key thing is, a lot of people, when they're thinking about wood or lumber, the only thing that they know is what they can buy at the store. And what that does, it automatically kind of limits the vision of the people, what they can do. Mm-hmm. And so really what I want to stress is, because it's your tree, and I have a tool, where we can do with that tree whatever you want to do, which is, way beyond of what you can, get in the store. And I've done stuff from a customer was building a house up in Grass Valley on the side of the hill, overviewing it, where he designed a house. It was a hexagon. So now a hexagon obviously doesn't meet 90 degrees, the walls, it's 120 degrees. So how and where are you going to get beams or posts that are supporting that geometry? Yeah. So, I've done stuff like that, all the way to the other extreme. What you see here, things like, if you want to build your own picnic table or park bench or whatnot, one of the things that's really the rage lately is what they call life edge, which is basically you leave the bark on.
Yes.
Or, the bark eventually comes off, where you just have the natural shape of the board. I'm doing a lot of that. You can play around with transitions. Hardwood, sapwood, where for example, if that would be the leg of a table, you could mill 4 legs that are basically looking the same, where you have a feature like that in each corner. And when you walk around, you can see that they're all matched. Stuff like that. Good luck trying to find something like that at Home Depot. Yeah.
Well, I think what I love about it is, and I have to admit, I'm a tree hugger. To take down a tree at my house is like the most painful process I have to go through. Yeah. And it just breaks my heart whenever I want to have to do it. So the thought that I could take that tree, that to me is of value to me, and I can actually take it and create something that has more permanence for me and I can still remember that tree, and it still brings some pleasure to me in my life.
Yeah.
And I think that is what is so beautiful about what you provide.
And you know, interesting that you put it like that. Really, the majority of the trees that I mill, they had to be taken out, or they just died. Yeah, that's one of the questions I'm always asking. What was wrong with the tree? Yeah, and I mean, you know, you're talking stuff from land development or solar installation or whatnot, where you know you have totally healthy trees that, you know, for, you know, whatever decision was made, you know. Then you have trees, you have windfall in a storm. You have trees that are gradually dying. Yeah, you can see coming from the top or whatnot. And it's a real great point, because I'm a tree hugger also. Yeah, although I slice them up. Yeah, but I don't just take a tree down without a purpose. Yeah, and just the way that you can preserve what you had out there. Yeah, is incredible. I mean, I had a project out in Georgetown a while back where an individual walked me out into the forest, and he said, "This is where I want to put my man cave." And he had already a blueprint, from an architect, and he had a cut list, and it was all laid out. And he said, "This is where it goes. I want to look in this direction." There were 4 stakes in the ground, and obviously those trees had to go where the stakes were. And he said, "I would like a little bit of view, so something over there has got to go." And we went through that list, and basically, in short, we milled all the framing lumber out of the Douglas fir that had to go. All the interior siding was cedar. Yeah, we used the pine to do the sheathing and the flooring. Yeah, and can you imagine if you follow through on a project like that, and you sit there on the front porch later on with your friends, and you're sipping your drink, and you can point over to that tree stump. You see that stump over there? You are literally standing on it.
Yes.
It's unbelievable what level of gratification you can get. And if you mix that together with cuts that I can make that you would not be able to get, you can, going back to where I struggled in the beginning with, where you said I'm an artist, and I looked it up. I looked it up because it was one of those things, I don't know about that. There's a definition that says it's a skilled person, a person skilled in a particular a trade or action or whatnot. I'll go with that. So I can do things where I can enable people to be artists, because they can do something with their own tree, with their own property, in a manner that nobody else can do like that, because it takes a very specific tool. It takes knowledge. One of the things I'm always telling the people that where I'm just doing a milling job, while they are hiring me for the milling, that's not what they're after. They want to have good boards.
Yes.
That's so my service got to lead to a final product that is suitable for their application, what they do. Yeah.
What you're doing is actually almost a collaboration with that property owner.
Oh yeah.
And was the property owner in that particular instance, you talked about that man cave, was he surprised by the lumber that you ended up with and the combinations that you're able to do for him?
Well, he was, and it was one of those examples where he was thinking along the lines, okay, if I would go to Meeks or Home Depot and buy it, and all the dimensions and stuff, it was all,
Yes.
like you go to the store. And I told him, hey, we can do that different. We can do something like that. We can posts, for example, if you use the right diameter of the tree and you go in dimensions off, so that a 6x6, you don't make it 5.5 by 5.5, you make it true 6 inches, just that half inch, you're gonna see, wait a minute, that's different. Yeah. Now, if you do that with the right diameter and you take out that 6x6 such that the corners still have some wane on it, a little bit bark, and you got that on all 4 corners, then it's not an accident. It's not a bad beam that you bought somewhere at the store. It was done with purpose. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You get into these kind of things, you're getting into trees that are bent, that if you orient them right and you slice them up, you get what I call surfboards. you get boards that are, you know, long, elliptical in shape with just awesome grain patterns in it. And, you know, and I'm telling people, I say, you see that log over there? Yeah. I said, that's the sign. What sign? You're going to build a barn, right? Yeah. I said, that's the sign above the barn that says John's Barn. I said, you'll see. And then you put that piece on there, you open it up, and, you know, you scrape off the sawdust, and you ask him, you see the sign? Oh, yeah, now I see the sign. Yeah.
Now, you had mentioned also with that project, there were all different types of lumber that you were using. Do you have one that's your favorite in working with it?
That's an interesting question. I've been asked that question a lot. It's one of those answers where I would say it depends. As a straightforward answer, in general terms, it would be what you see behind me. Yeah. But if you look at it from the perspective of, you know, manufacturability or stability of the product, or, I mean, you know, there's a lot of things that are going in. It really depends. Yeah. I mean, you wouldn't use something like that for framing, obviously.
Oh, that would be terrible.
They did that in the old days.
No,
yeah.
I know. If it was a tree, it obviously was meant to support things.
Yeah.
So how does someone go about caring for this product to maintain its beauty and to lengthen its longevity?
With what we have in the building
Yes.
here, well, we put a coat of polyurethane on it, which, you know, does a fairly good job of protecting it in terms of moisture, in terms of, you know, smudges that you can wash it off. It really depends on what it is, you know, interior stuff, exterior stuff in the shade or in the full sun. You know, there's what's the species. So, I mean, I can literally say that every project that I do is 100% custom and so different that, you know, it just warrants, you know, talking with the customer, going there, looking at things. All of it takes weeks and months, all of it, yeah. So I don't know if I answered your question.
No, I can understand that. So it depends on the project, depends on its placement, what went into it, how much sun it's going to get.
Yeah.
How much moisture is going to be around.
Yeah.
It would be dependent upon that. But we certainly would like to figure out a way to preserve it for as long as it can.
Absolutely, yeah.
Now I know because I've shown in this building before, and one of the things that they're very, very emphatic about is you don't put any nails in this wood.
Yeah.
And I think that everyone that comes in here is very appreciative of the fact that this building, the walls, they bring an extra element to any show that is here. And certainly I've been here as an artist, and I always figure it's a perfect backdrop.
Let me tell you a little secret. There actually is a way how you can put up pictures in here without putting a nail in the wall.
Is that rail?
It is that the trim in the middle that's going all the way around, and on the two end walls, actually the next trim above, I cut out a little rabbet, which is basically a recess in the back, and there's a special set of hooks that you can slide on it, and then those hooks can, you know, with some wire you can put up some paintings or, you know, whatnot without
having to put
putting
that
a nail
in.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? I want to thank you so much for being with us today, because sharing this with us has been an absolute treat for me. And I want to tell people that if you get a chance, you need to come by this building. I know that there's several events that go on at the Gold Country Fairgrounds, and I was actually in the building at the home show that was just this last weekend. There are always something that's going on here, going to the Mandarin Festival, the Gold Country Fairgrounds is always hosting the fair in the fall. So it's always a great opportunity to come in. By any chance, do you linger around so people can talk to you here?
You know what? Not at this point.
Or should I say lurk? Do you lurk?
Not at this point.
Okay.
Yeah. Usually when I was working, it was. I mean, you're talking weeks and weeks of me being in this building. You know, there was quite a few people who poked their head in, and I'm more than happy to, you know, explain what I'm doing here. If somebody wants me to give a tour of the building, you saw our contact information. You can call me, and usually I have a key, because there's little ongoing stuff still, and we might have some bigger projects with the ceiling. I can arrange for a tour. Yeah.
And since you brought that up, let's talk about the ceiling, and because I don't want to forget this. So the ceiling obviously is not finished, and there's a few little nuances about the ceiling that makes it kind of a unique project for you. So kind of talk to us about what you envision for what's going to be above us and some of the issues that you have to address.
So you have to put it in the context of, wow, this is going to be a very unique building, one of a kind in Placer County. And if you want to finish it entirely, you kind of have to stick with that theme. Yeah. So I was approached and asked, well, what is it that we could potentially do with the ceiling? And my input was that you don't want to put redwood up there because it's just getting too dark and overwhelming. There's some really nice round rafters in here. Request was we want them exposed. Yeah. So I'm kind of proposing a pine ceiling, a clear pine. Those actually, I would attempt to get some out of the local forests, potentially, get them donated or whatnot. Trees that would have to die anyhow. I don't want a tree to be cut down just for that. And then when you put it up, you want to make sure that you're not blocking any future options for the building. So for example, if you want to change the roof, do some repairs on the sheathing. And so I came up with a proposal where the ceiling would be installed between the rafters and would not be attached to the actual sheathing of the roof. There would be a cavity that could be insulated to upgrade the building also, so that in the future, if there's any repairs, if somebody has to access the roof from above, you could rip out boards without ripping out the underlying ceiling. Yeah. And I think pine in the color, it really complements the sapwood of redwood. It would give a nice contrast to the rafters that we have already. I think it would look real nice.
And so that's going to depend now on obviously financing, locating the wood, and then your time that'll go into it. And again, if you put it in the context of the entire building, now you're looking at, all right, what are we going to do with the lighting? Are we going to integrate lighting in the ceiling? What are we going to do with the fans? And are we going to incorporate, an audio system? And I mean, it's just, so there's a lot of questions that, and all of that are somehow involving money one way or the other, and you have several parties being involved. So it's, I trust everyone who was part of the process here and who liked it to do their due diligence, and that we'll make it happen. But it's great to know that it's still a work in progress.
Oh yeah.
And more to come, and maybe when it's all completed, we can be back again. Again, thank you so very much.
Thank you for your time.
I also want to thank the Auburn host Lions and the Gold Country Fairgrounds for allowing us access to the building today in order to present this program. I also want to thank the Auburn host Lions for their continued support of Meet the Artist and Auburn Community Television. It is through their donations that we are able to actually film on location like this. And of course, I want to thank you for tuning in to Meet the Artist on Auburn Community Television, either by tuning in to Channel 20 or watching us on YouTube. Who knows, by watching this show, maybe you've discovered that there's an artist living just around the corner, or just possibly there's an artist within you.